Welcome to our video tutorial, Apparo Fast Edit and Variables Hands-On. First, we show you how to define your own variables. You can define your own variables in the business case in the menu Variables. Click the Add button. For our example, we first create a simple script variable. Now we enter a name for the variable and define the script body. In the tab Data Output format, we can specify the desired data output types. You can choose between text or number with the option for the number of decimal places or date types, with predefined date formats, or custom formats. In the Help section, you'll find examples. We have created our first own variable and can use it in our business case. Which types of variables can you use in Fast Edit? There are internal variables. These are predefined variables that you can use immediately. There are widget reference variables, which you can also use immediately. These variables always contain the value of the corresponding widget. Script variables using JavaScript and must be defined by the designer. SQL variables contain an SQL command and must first be defined in the designer too. Report variables contain values that are transported from a report or from a master to a detailed business case. The last variable type is OS variables. These are defined in the operating system and can be used globally in all business cases. Internal variables. A list of available internal variables can also be found in the menu Variables in the tab Internal Variables. A typical example of an internal variable is the language variable. This variable contains the language used by the user. For English-speaking users, it's the string EN, and for German-speaking users, DE. This variable can be used, for example, in a widget of type drop-down for providing multilingual text outputs. The underlying database table column contains only a number. With this number, Fast Edit looks in the corresponding lookup table and replaces this number with the plain text stored in the corresponding lookup table column. The English text is stored in the column Product, Name, EN, and the German text in Product, Name, DE. We will replace at this point EN with the language variable and achieve this way that, depending on which language the user has, Fast Edit is looking in column Product, Name, EN, or Product, Name, DE, and outputs the text contained therein. Of course, you can also use any other language. Another way for multilingual data output with the language variable is the use within variables. In this example, we create an info text for the bulk update widget. The text is given out in the user's language by using the language variable. The script variable is asking if the content of the language variable is DE. If so, then a German text will be output. If not, then an English text. Widget reference variables. You may know that widget reference variables from our introduction video about variables. Reminder, the name of the widget reference variable is always derived from the name of the corresponding database column. In a widget reference variable, the content of the widget is stored. A typical application example is the usage in filters. In our product widget, we use the product line ID as a filter. In the application, this means that the only products are displayed which are associated with this product line. For example, the product line Polo contains other products. In addition to this example, there are many other use cases for widget reference variables. For example, in other variables, in the data row validation feature, or as a parameter when calling scripts or database procedures. JavaScript variables. JavaScript variables using JavaScript for the variable definition and feature an integrated syntax check which either returns OK if the syntax is correct or otherwise an error, the line number, and a description of the error. By clicking on the question mark, the online help will open, with many relevant examples, as well as the complete JavaScript reference. As well as the usage in business cases, you can define and use JavaScript variables in database connections. The script variables created here can be used in all business cases which are using this database connection. You can use any other variable type within JavaScript variables. It's important to note, if the variable used contains a string, then you must enclose the variable in single quotes. SQL variables. There are two types of SQL variables available. The SQL variable for target table only can only make queries against the target table and automatically integrates all the filters used in the business case. For example, here the global filter, the security groups-based filter, and the filters of the filter widgets. The SQL variable for all tables can perform queries against any database table that can be accessed via the database connection used in the business case and is not including any used filters automatically. Our SQL variable here uses the widget reference variable ID to get the content of the database column type, where the ID is equal to the corresponding widget reference variable. SQL variables for all tables can use so-called security group dependent filters. With these filters, you can show, for example, only data rows to the current user which are associated to him. In addition, for all tables, the SQL provides the possibility to define own where conditions for all used filter widgets. Report variables. Report variables are used to carry values of business intelligence reports to the business case or from a master to a detailed business case. As well as the variable name, you can define a default value here. This is used when the calling report is delivering no value or when starting the business case from the designer. The values of business intelligence reports are transported to the called business case as highlighted here in red in the URL. This can be, for example, the content of a prompt or the content of any report variable. If you want to transport a value from a master to a detailed business case, as here, the content of the widget product, line ID, go to the tab Mapping and Others and enter the name of the report variable that shall contain this value in the detailed business case. In the detailed business case, you must define a report variable of the same name. Environment variables. Environment variables you define in the operating system where the application server was installed. On Windows, you'll find it in System Environment Variables. Fast Edit recognizes all system variables as own variables starting with AFE_. The variables defined here can be used in all clients and business cases. An overview of the defined environment variables you can find in the business case in the list of internal variables. Are two underscores added to the prefix AFE, then you can use the variable as usual, but it will not appear in the list of internal variables. Usage possibilities of variables. Usage in lookup and filter definitions. Variables can be used in lookup and filter definitions, as here, the language variable that we have mentioned previously, to output the clear name in the language of the user. And also here, in this filter drop-down widgets to restrict the selection. In the front end it looks like this. The filter in our lookup widget limits here the output of the second widget to countries that belong to the continent selected in the first widget. The language variable in the lookup definition provides here the English country names. Usage in header and footer area and as default or constant values. Variables can also be used in the header and footer area, such as here, or here the output of the user's language in the footer. Variables can be used in the calculation area or as a default or as a constant value. We store here the username as a constant value in insert and update case, which means the value cannot be changed by the user. In the front end it looks like this. In the header, you see the output of the name, and in the bottom the output of the user's language. In the insert area are the names of the user and the current date automatically stored using constant values. In the calculation area, we displayed as an example the number of available data rows and also the number of filtered data rows. If we use a filter, then the number of filtered rows changes. Usage as column headers and in descriptions and hints. You can use variables as column label or in the visual help texts as the description text, which is a tooltip shown when the user moves with mouse on the column label, or as a hint text. Hint texts are displayed in empty widgets and serve as an indication which data format is expected here. Variables can also be used as reading and writing expressions. Usage in message windows and emails. Variables can also be used in message windows, for example when deleting data, in the message window of the bulk update feature, or the Excel import message window. Variables can also be used in email business cases, in the settings, in the list of recipients, or in the body to insert any data. Usage in script and procedure calls. Variables can also be used when calling scripts and database procedures. Like here in the feature, Post-Business Case Execution in Success Case. Here are two variables passed as parameters to the database. This also applies to the call of scripts and database procedures via button. Usage in variables and data quality checks. A further possible use is the data row validation. The widgets here are validated depending on each other. Widget reference variables are always used, but it's also possible to use all other types of variables. When checking the data quality on widget level, you can specify validity intervals for number and date formats. This can be a percentage or an absolute interval. For example, users must enter at least 100 and are allowed to enter a maximum of 1000 and receive an error message otherwise. Variables can be used for minimum and maximum values and allow dynamic intervals. For date types, this applies accordingly. You can only enter a date here that's later than the minimum date or before the maximum date. For text widgets, the regular expressions can also be specified with variables. Variables can also be used in almost any way in other variables. The variables used here can contain other variables too, then these also, and so on. Variables can be made very simple or complex with almost no limits. We've arrived at the end of this tutorial. If you have questions, please contact support.